Hey guys, I'm in Amsterdam for a trade show for the first time in 5 years. This is IBC, so this is the European version of NAB in the States that we went to in April. This is the European version of that. Lots of broadcast manufacturers, lots of software here this year, and a lot of talk about extended reality and augmented reality production. If I heard Epic Games Unreal Engine once, I heard it about 20 times in the conversation. So that is absolutely being brought into the augmented reality and virtual reality productions, especially for live broadcast, whether that's sports, weather, even news broadcasts, they were showing that as well. There are tons of what I call traditional AV manufacturers here. You have Shure, you have Sony, you have Sennheiser, VizRT, which we've seen a lot, especially with the integration of NewTek and the TriCaster into that company. You've got VTech, tons of traditional AV manufacturers, and AV people. I ran into my buddy Chris Netto from Midwich. We got Neil Flooster is here, Justin Dawson from Ireland, a number of U.S. companies as well. So you can check out more on our website, AVNation.tv. You can check out our IBC coverage. But that is why I am not in the studio with you, and that is why Patrick is going to take over. So thanks, guys. See you next week.
Welcome to AV Week, episode 734, recorded on September 12th, 2025. I'm in for Tim Albright. My name is Patrick Norton, and I hope you enjoy the show today because we have a fantastic group of people joining us. Steph Beckett, managing editor of Raves Pubs, an opinionated AV news organization that reports on home AV, pro AV, rental, staging, education, and digital signage.
You got it.
Do we miss anything, Steph?
No, that's it. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. Joe Dunbar, project engineer at Midwich US, a market leader in the distribution of UC and VC solutions and education products. And like I was not too long ago, you are a full-time RVer. Where are you right now, sir?
I am, I don't want to give away too much, Patrick. I like to keep the secret, but I am in northern Minnesota. That's what I'll give you guys right now. It's perfect.
I was going to say a good place to be while it's still too hot in the middle of the country.
Exactly.
And Willie Franklin, he spent many years as a senior technology specialist at Otterbein University. He is now retired and bringing the jams as Franklin DJ and Event Services LLC. And as of today, like myself, a master troubleshooter and podcaster from Carr.
And it's a delightful space to be in, overlooking the foliage right across from this amazingly large parking lot.
I'm always delighted by the acoustics in cars actually being alarmingly functional compared to almost every conference room in the United States.
That's a key point.
Surprisingly, a lot less glass.
A lot more absorption.
Still a fishbowl, though, isn't it?
It's a very pleasant fishbowl.
Oh, my goodness. Well, let's start out. We got a story from AV Interactive. And this is an interesting one. We can talk about where we want AI, where we do not want AI, but this is essentially about cold calling customers. An AI Dream Team developed a voice agent to call 6,000 dormant customers and reach 50,000 miscellaneous leads, according to a Next Talk at Infocom. And there was a lot of excitement when I mentioned this before the show started.
It's a hot topic.
I mean, is this a hot topic because everyone hates cold calling?
It's a hot topic because the word AI, I think, right?
Why not both?
Yeah, you got it, Steph.
It's like a symbiotic relationship, right? How many of us have gone to a web page, a vendor's page, and an AI bot pops up to ask us a question of, how can I help you? So yeah, it was only the next step on the horizon, really.
Oh, my goodness. So Karen Castano, Almo Pro AV, was talking about this at the Next Infocom 2025 AI Executive Leadership Summit, which is a mouthful. And she essentially had 6,000 dormant customers, 50,000 odd miscellaneous leads, and 2 people to work through them for a great big 26-person strong sales team. So developed a quote, synthetic voice agent, Aria, with a budget of just $6,000. Started with a scripted system, pre-recorded everything. That was a mess. And then they basically moved to an LLM to create, recordings of Castano's voice, created the voice to talk to potential customers. And it's wild because it talks about what they went through, creating a 5-minute conversation, providing 2 hours of recordings, and finally getting to the point where Aria would actually have success. And I feel like, because the farther I got into this article, the more I was like, oh yeah, now it's starting to sound right. So after you invest a whole bunch of time, AI begins to have the beginning of solving the problem that everybody told me it would take care of in 5 minutes. Or are y'all having a different AI experience than I am?
The jury's out on agents still. It's a very kind of, I don't want to say an early technology because I know it's been developing for quite a while, but we haven't seen it implemented quite yet widely. I really like the idea of it. So that all sounds great, but anytime I hear the term AI, one of my favorite things to say is just because we can doesn't mean we should. And so caution is my my key word here. I like to lead with caution, but there's the article it's optimistic. I'm optimistic about it based on that information, and that makes me excited about it. But yet to be determined.
Okay. We're handing all these leads. I mean, maybe inactive leads, maybe that makes it a little, okay. 56,000 phone numbers to people. Obviously, anything to wade through that faster is going to be a huge help. And, the line in the article, quote, the results proved encouraging. Disconnected numbers and defunct companies were identified. Fresh contacts replaced advantage one. And a handful of customers stayed on the line, asked for product guidance, and were connected to reps.
See, to me, that sounds very promising. And I have to admit, as I think about the arc of my career, there was really never a time where cold calls were a part of what I did. That came far later in life with regards to the DJ business. And it's really an elective piece, right? So I elect to go to wedding showcases and bridal events and get this massive book of potential leads. And the cold calls begin after that. I would venture to say that if I had that tool and employed it to reach out to those clients, there is an increased potential that I would gain some additional business. Cold calls can be difficult. You're trying to figure out what's the right thing to say. But then there's another part of this that I thought about. I said to myself, what if the client on the other end gets that cold call, recognizes the fact that it's AI, and thinks to themselves, wow, this must be a really cutting edge DJ to have implemented a system like that. So, I had to think outside of the box and ask myself, is this the next tool in my arsenal of capturing new clients?
Has anybody, I experiment constantly with ChatGPT. It's like the fastest, most bizarre freelancer I've ever worked with. Like I started out in magazines and worked in live television for a long time. And I always laugh because ChatGPT is like, dude's fast, but he might be on crank that day. So the copy could be a little loose, right? And ChatGPT, I will say, is evolving fast. And compared to some pay-for-play, I saw sort of a gig economy writing service, and they were like, let us do a sample for you. And I remember being like, wow, you don't know what a lead paragraph is. You didn't follow the outline, and you can't spell. So thank you for your time. And the senior editor at the group was like, well, what's a lead paragraph? And I was like, wow.
Okay.
Yeah, Steph knows what I mean.
Do I? No, I see the vision though here. It's like when you have a small team and you need help, but maybe you can't hire another person for this particular project, this is where AI can step in and help you, because it's not necessarily meant to replace a person or like replace human creativity. It's just meant to supplement and get tasks out of the way so that like you can keep doing your work and doing your work better. Like this is what AI should be built for. Like
the hamburger helper of marketing.
Yeah, like I don't see AI ever replacing like either of our jobs, Patrick. Like I'm gonna be so honest. Like
please,
because
please, I have children.
ChatGPT has only learned to write, has only learned to build its models from the things that we have written that are out there, the things that humans have written. So if humans stop writing altogether and rely solely on ChatGPT, it's never going to keep learning. It's never going to be able to advance its model because it's going to have nothing to learn from. So
This is the dead internet theory
Yeah.
right here. Yeah, we're just bots in a loop. I have Steph, a great point, right? Like it's all about application and how we leverage it. Coming back to the article, they had success after Patrick, like you said, they put in a bunch of time and a fair amount of money and learned some things and had to redo some things. And then they got to a point where they had some relative success. So as always, planning up front saves you a bunch of time and gives you more success in the end. But I'm curious just how anybody feels here. How would you feel if you got a cold call and picked up and realized it was an AI bot?
I can honestly say I've gotten a number of similar calls. It was insurance,
Okay.
car sales, and it wasn't a human being. And of course, you had to press prompt A, B, and C. Now, this bot sounds a bit more intuitive with regards to the Q&A that it engages the potential client in. I wasn't put off because I recognized that I had the power. I had the power to disconnect at any time. So I think I was more intrigued at the technology versus finding it off-putting.
I mean, it's interesting because I have lived in a couple parts of the country where phone spam became an utter nightmare. And I laugh because there is a list floating around of residences in St. Louis. And at one point, I think I got 18 calls in the space of 1 week that was like, are you the owner of the property at blah, 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 blah street? I'd like to buy your home. And the first round, it turned out somebody had used, oddly enough, I got to actually talk to somebody a step up at this very small operation, which actually happened to be run by somebody in St. Louis. They're like, well, we got a mailing list. This guy put it together using AI. And I'm like, great. Don't pay for their list again.
Bad info and garbage in, garbage out, it sounds like. That's the old adage.
It was phenomenally annoying, and I've literally had phone messages. Usually they don't leave phone messages, but once in a while they do, or I'll screw up and pick up the number. And it has been everything from Indian call centers to people, in the United States to random telebots. And I mention all this because at this point, having been spammed so much on the phone, I almost never pick up a number I don't recognize.
Yeah.
I have had like the number for my utility I have in my phone and some other stuff. So I recognize those phone numbers and I will answer them. And I'm with Willie. Like if it goes like, are you aware that your electrical bill is whatever? And like that I can deal with. It's just the random like, hello, this is Toby. So glad to talk to you. Is this Patrick at insert address here? And I'd like to talk to you about saving money on your automotive, and it's like at this point I've already hung up, right? So I also, if AI makes random phone calls more functional, I can get behind it.
I will say when you start to get those insurance calls, you become keenly aware that you're a person of a certain age, and you start to question, is this a precursor to something major to happen in my life?
That's fair. I honestly hadn't considered that, Willie, but I suppose this is the new version of when I first got. I'm a middle-aged guy on the younger side, but middle-aged, and when I first got a card in the mail to join AARP, I was.
It's a surprisingly young age they invite you.
They do, and I was a little offended at first, and then I started reading through the benefits, and I was like, maybe this isn't so bad. So I guess
car
kind of coming back
rates
to it.
alone are worth the membership.
Yeah, right.
wait, you guys, what age is it? Just so I can be prepared.
I think I started getting them in my late 20s.
Holy cow.
Well, damn, they missed me.
Yeah.
Now I'm kind of mad.
You'll get an AI call in an hour, I bet.
Yeah, they're listening.
Yeah.
They know now that I'm in the market.
AARP membership is open to anyone 18 or older. However, some benefits are restricted to people of 50 or older. So
Okay.
I had no idea you could be that that young. But
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. The mission is dedicated to the needs of the 50-plus population, but anyone can become a member.
Join the powerful group known as the Silver Sneakers.
I think we've beaten AI to death.
Right.
All right. Okay, that was alarmingly fun and alarmingly weird. Let's talk about let's talk about better background sound. So the article is up on avnetwork.com, System Contractor News, Kurt Olesen, and he's essentially talking about how digital signage is this huge, important, popular thing for retail, for businesses, for pretty much everything at this point, because digital signage seems to be everywhere. But that it is time to bring music into the digital signage experience. So,
Long
Steph?
overdue.
Why do you say that?
I say that because as the individual who drove the innovation and implementation of digital signage on my campus, we did some really powerful things with that visual space. But the Achilles tendon was not having any music that rolled along with that. In other words, if you were walking by and that content captured your attention, that was great. But if it were just static images, not a roving video, there was nothing to really frame your emotional experience. And one of the greatest challenges was in one of our largest venue with this massive video wall. So while there was visual content there, again, there was no music. And then when music was attempted to be implemented, we found out that the integrator hadn't properly set up a commercial account. So it was linked to a staff member Apple or iTunes account. And of course, if that person's not logged in with their personal details to push music, and you're listening to their playlist, it created a level of complication of just trying to answer the administration when they would walk in and have a high-level meeting in that space and really wanted to showcase it, why there was no music playing that day. It's like, well, Paul's not here and it's Paul's account and no one knows Paul's login credentials because cybersecurity is important on campus.
Oh my goodness. I'm thinking of a restaurant near my house where somebody told me the story of the owner finding out that somebody had bypassed their system to basically plug phones into the music streaming system because they walked in and something they did not want to hear in their restaurant was playing over the overhead speakers. It was, oddly enough, country and western music. But it was just, I guess it just, I get that it didn't fit with the ambience, but I remember thinking like all that money, all that installation, and you didn't actually lock it down.
I did that. I'm going to get in trouble. Whatever. I did that in LG's booth once at CEDIA Expo. They didn't lock down any of the Bluetooth in any of the technology they had in their booth. So I said, all right. So I just started playing whatever I wanted in their booth. And they did.
You did them a favor
the next year. Yeah, no, I did because what they were playing was like not fun, and I was like, "Let's get some Chappell Roan in here, guys. Let's really pump up the party." They did lock that down the next CD though.
I bet they did.
I mean, everyone in any kind of security, particularly cybersecurity, knows that you're only as good as kind of the weakest link in the chain. And one thing we haven't mentioned is the implications for ASCAP and BMI and royalties and copyright infringement and things like that.
Yep.
But Kurt cites some data that just proves that the additional, I guess to your point, Willie, the additional context that audio can provide along with the video, we all know how important it is, increases sales and customer retention and customer experience by a long shot.
Huge, like 37%, quote, brand
40% retention.
Music played in stores, sales increased an average of 37%, and then, quote, music aligned with brand identity, extending customer dwell time by more than 40% and improved purchase intent. That is insane. I mean, that's...
Yeah. It comes down to implementation and execution again, right, in the right place. To your point, Willie, playing the right things in the space and making sure that it aligns with the vibe, for lack of a better way to say it. But if you do it right, in my opinion, if you build it, they will come. And this is the data shows that.
And I think that there is something to be said here which you guys did also both say, but like this could add like a potential revenue stream, and any new potential revenue stream for integrators, like I'm all for it. So, previously there weren't a ton of options for like commercial grade like music to play with digital signage, but now there are. They exhibit at your ISCs, your infocoms every year. I see more of these companies every year, it seems like. So there are a ton of options now in a very easy, like elegant way for an integrator to now offer that, when previously you're right, it was like, okay, well, you just had to hope that Bob and his like Apple Music account were here and that hopefully he can log in and play his playlist, or else we're screwed, which you could get like really fined for that, if anyone catches you.
Yes.
So, this is a good opportunity for integrators to be able to educate, these businesses about that, and then provide the solution as well at the same time.
Yeah, I like to your point, Steph. The recurring revenue, always a good opportunity for anybody in the market, right? I have seen different recurring revenue opportunities come up. We've all seen it, right, in the last 10, 15 years or whatever. And I feel like our industry in particular has sort of fumbled a lot of those, if I'm just being honest. And I feel like this one is prime. This is a prime opportunity because we're already dealing with digital signage and licenses and things like that. So it's well primed for people to be successful with it, which is probably what excites me the most.
It's literally made to be offered as a service.
As you speak about that service and licensing and certainly cybersecurity, part of my thoughts evolve around how do we get the client to understand the depth of that minutia, right? Steph, you mentioned about not having Bluetooth locked down and being able to push, your favorite content, which I think was wonderful, by the way. Okay. Not that
yes, kudos.
Anyone listening or watching this to do that, but often clients don't understand that, right? They want to use the most consumer-friendly tool that they're using in their home in the business space. So when you start talking security, when you start talking procedural approaches, when you start talking licenses, their eyes tend to glaze over. They see dollar signs, and they don't see the application for it. And it can be a challenge to kind of manage up, so to speak, explain to those budget holders, those purse holders, why it's important, why it's crucial to move in said direction. And what happens if you fail to do so, such as Bluetooth, such as not having the appropriate license. No one would ever question about a bar down the road or hotel why it's not playing the NFL game if the person on the other side of that counter says, well, we're not licensed to play that. Most people get it. But you go into other environments and that argument seems to be lost in people's ability to understand what licensing, what cybersecurity, what lockdown procedures are all about until they get the cease and desist letter or email from an attorney.
Yeah, I mean, I would illustrate that, Willie, by just explaining to them, like, look, willful ignorance of this. I'm looking it up while we're chatting here. Willful ignorance of that. If you're found willfully ignorant, damages go $30,000 up to $150,000 per Chat GPT. So asterisk. But it's substantial, right? That's a figure that should get some eyes open.
Yeah, and I think it's been a few years, but I think ASCAP. I don't remember what a combined ASCAP, but like an ASCAP license was maybe $1,000 a year. I don't know where it is now, and there's so many curated music services. Because I laugh because a friend of mine was like, they always have great music in this store. I'm like, they have hundreds of stores. They have somebody who's responsible for the vibe, and he's like, oh, they do decorate this place a lot. They do decorate this place a lot. But it's funny, and then you get to like, I think it was 2019, ASCAP did a bunch of lawsuits, and it was basically like, a lot of fairly small bars all around the country. They did a really good job of like nailing half the states in the U.S., I feel like. Because, it's a public venue. There are rules. They have rights. Artists should be paid. It also continues to shock me how many people are like, well, they're already rich. I'm like, no, not all of them.
There's a fine line at times for businesses to stay profitable. You can millions of dollars, but if your overhead cost is into the hundreds of millions of dollars, you're definitely operating in the red. And a quick little maybe not so funny sidebar. A good buddy of mine, he and I decided to take in the Super Bowl. This was years ago. And we just happened to hit a pub in downtown Columbus. I believe it was a posh place. They had the game on, but the audio was turned down. So we asked the bartender, hey, would you mind turning the audio up? The game's about to start. And he says, well, we can't turn the audio on. We are not fully licensed to broadcast it. And we looked, what? You have 17 TVs within easy viewing of our seat here, and you're not licensed? Just, well, if you want to hear it, you have to pull it up on your phone. So I kid you not, for 2 quarters, we watched the Super Bowl because we enjoyed the vibe at the bar, listening to audio on our phones and watching the TV. And the two were about 30 seconds out of sync. So I can't recall if you saw the play before you heard the call or you heard the call before you saw the play. I think because the quality of the beer, because it was custom, it was a draft brewery that was fantastic. And the ales were wonderful. And I guess that's what mattered most, maybe, because because we weren't so annoyed at that time differential. You know, lag has its advantages when maybe you're not sober. I don't know.
The final article we want to talk about today comes out of Rave Pubs. Steph, your very keys, fingers, eyeballs were probably on this story. You're responsible for this story.
No, I didn't write it. I was just responsible for putting the edits on it and posting it.
Sorry, this is sassy editor humor.
Don't get it twisted.
So Simon Dudley wrote this for Rave, and it's, you know, it's an interesting article, right? It's talking on some level, you know, the best product wins, right? Well-defined best. And they get into the subject of corporate governance. And I remember reading through this and thinking, like, I love this. This is the will they still be around when I need them conversation. And I am amazed sometimes at how willing some organizations are to trust technology or trust that the company they have just invested in by buying their products will not be acquired by somebody who will make them disappear. Or, I mean, I could go on. You know, I mentioned in pre-show, I had a friend of mine was like, look at what Google's doing. I'm like, have you seen killedbygoogle.com? Because they have an alarming number of products that have just gone away. Not because they couldn't afford to maintain them, but just because they couldn't be bothered. You know, and some of them were fairly popular tools or projects. So, you know, what do you all, you know, when you're going through this with a client or for your team or as part of a sale, you know, where do you guys, you know, how do you rack things? You know, is it technology? Is it shiny new technology? Is it will the company be around? Is it, you know, do we just keep buying the same stuff we've been buying? That classic 1980s phrase, nobody ever got fired for buying IBM until they did.
Right. Eventually, it came for everybody. You know, Patrick, I'm fortunate enough to have worked kind of all up and down the channel in Enterprise AV and Pro Audio and studios and things like that. And now in my role working for a distributor, I don't want to say barrage. That's not really fair. I welcome the invites for people and manufacturers who have new and exciting products and technologies, and I get to be in a lot of those conversations. But what misses the mark more often than not, it's like you can have the best product, you can have the best price, and still not win. There are so many other things to consider, to Simon's point here. And that's how it should be, frankly. It should be more than just those kind of two things, and I think we see that a lot. But on the other end of that, I do feel like in our industry in particular, we see over-reliance on familiarity, because usually that comes with the ability to set expectations and deliver on them pretty consistently. And, you know, you are doing your customer a service by, you know, setting expectations and delivering on those. You could also be doing your customer a disservice by not being more open-minded and being aware that there may be a better solution for their needs.
I'm flashing back to the COVID times when someone we all love and trust in the AV industry made finishing projects really hard for a long time. You know, and it's also amazing, you know, do we shift too quickly or too slowly in the AV industry, or does it just totally matter by which organization you're dealing with? You know, because I feel like sometimes, you know, I hear about different projects and you're like, wow, SDI cable, you go. All right. I love that, you know, and then, you know, I have an 86 Suburban that'll never die with a 6.2 diesel engine, but
Wow.
I'd probably never buy another 6.2 diesel engine, even though this one will probably never die. But, you know, I mean, I'm laughing, right? Because as somebody who spent a lot of time in consumer electronics and people adopting things at the pace of stupid, it also amazes me that people be like, I don't know, AV over IP, that's pretty bleeding edge. I mean, are you laughing because I'm wrong, or because
No,
you know,
you're spot on. Sorry, Willie, go ahead.
No, I was going to say you're spot on. I guess I cut my teeth in an arena that kind of moved at a glacial pace. And higher ed can be cutting edge, but it can also be so budget driven that it can stifle innovation at times. So going with the new shiny things is often not an option. Going with the proven repertoire of vendors and performers is really a must. And then it comes down to delivering what the client needs, not so much the brand, you know, and
Right.
you really have to listen. You have to be a good listener first and foremost. And some time back, I gave a presentation entitled Classroom Design with Emotional Intelligence in Mind, because we were going through all kinds of growth pains on campus. And as I talked with colleagues, they were experiencing the same thing. So it gave rise to this presentation. All of that shared, integrating for me has always been a game of, choosing the right product, whether it's A, B, and C, but choosing a product that I felt very comfortable that they were going to be around in
Right.
5-8 years. And I chose that time interval really based on the refresh rate of the campus budget and on a lot of budgets on campus. The only faster moving chunk of innovation that happened on my campus had to do in the PC realm, the networking,
Right.
the virtualization realm. That moved a lot faster. There was a 2 to 3 year refresh rate on all of that. And I was okay with that because AV, well-designed AV, can really live and be effective for 10 to 15 years. Shh, don't tell the budget holders. That doesn't mean that you're going to stay, I don't know, compatible with what's happening out there in the market. And I say the market from a standpoint of the recruitment of young minds, hearts and minds that are coming to campus, and parents who are looking at your technology and saying, this is a good fit for my child. So there's a clientele there that is often looking for the best of the best or the newest shiny gadget. But then there's also a clientele, your professors, your staff members, your administrators, who are looking for those things that are dependable, that are predictable, that are familiar. So you have to figure out a way of walking that fine line.
Right.
I don't think I ever achieve consensus with all of those folks. But if I could get 80 to 90% of them on board, to me, that's a big one.
Yeah, you're doing well.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I think that all of these points kind of lead to like where corporate governance comes in, because again, like on the surface, it seems like nobody really cares about that kind of thing because everyone wants to talk about like, this is the product, this is how cool it is, this is how it's going to change all of these processes, it's going to fix everything for you. But at the end of the day, like the purchasing department, the people buying it, they care about risk and if this is going to last. They want to see the audited financials. They want to see the proven stability. So this is totally where it comes in and where that can really, really shine, and where like knowing a product's competition can absolutely help you in that moment.
100%. Willie, you mentioned being a good listener, and I've found that in addition to that, I really pride myself on being a good translator, so to speak, because often the stakeholders don't speak our language, and it's really important that we know how to pick up what they're saying and turn it into what they mean in our verbiage, right? And I get the language all the time, like, what's the best for this? Or is this the best? What would you do? Or whatever. And it's like, what's the right thing to do? There are a lot of right things to do. There are a million ways to bake a cake and still get a cake at the end of the day, and they can all look different. But what works for you is really what we're trying to hone in on. And to Simon's point, and Steph, you're reiterating, right? Corporate governance can help decide that. So I have always really tried to guide our partners to finding the answer for themselves out of the available options that I may provide or, mention. But that's a lot to juggle for a lot of folks, A lot of people that run businesses aren't necessarily business people.
Well, that's why you should have a trusted AV integrator to help you find the right path, which is, given that I work for CTI, probably a self-serving statement. But I also want to add that I love that Dudley pointed out that, there's a line towards, about halfway down the article where he talks about where did their senior leadership come from. And this is something I tend to pay attention to in certain areas because, if this company you've worked with suddenly brought somebody in, or, if they've been purchased by private equity, if they've been acquired, or if they've brought in somebody from Super Megacorp, whichever Super Megacorp you like or hate, you can usually, generally speaking, if somebody was a incredibly high executive at this company whose business you like or don't like moves to this company you're thinking about investing in, there's a strong chance that that company is going to be moving in the direction that you like or hate based on where they've spent the last 10 or 20 years of their career. And it always amazes me how people are like, oh, executives can't change. Oh, yes, they can. They may not be able to turn the ship as fast as they want to, but they can often turn the ship in ways that maybe you did not anticipate when you invested in this project.
Well said. Yeah.
That's always, I'm always kind of fascinated when a company just changes its model, preferably right before I potentially buy their product and not right after.
It's always the latter of those two, isn't it?
Not always,
it feels like.
But sometimes I feel like I've just taken the hit and I'm going to learn a whole lot about how a company can change.
I have a very firm rule for myself that I do not buy first generation stuff, anything. And I've broken it a few times, and I've been bit by it almost all of those times.
I reviewed a lot of products for a lot of years, and I remember laughing because somebody was like, I thought your house would be full of all of this insert bleeding edge tech here. I'm like, no, man. No.
It doesn't work. Surprise.
Or
not supported.
Is it ever that worth it being an early adopter?
On some things, digital cameras, it went from being like this really weird experience to being, I can take enough pictures fast enough without going broke to radically improve my composition and my technique. Other areas,
Right.
Yeah. Maybe when we started moving away from plasma TVs, it was worth it being an early adopter there too. But other than that.
Well, I'd
still buy a plasma TV if I could. So no, I'm kidding.
No, I think OLED. I think OLED's got you covered at this point.
They do now. But there was a big gap for a long time where people were all about LCD and then LED, and it's still, plasma was still kind of winning in some of those spaces. That's an interesting
crazy to me.
topic.
Well, it was like you went from 480i to 480p to 720i to 720p to 1080i to 1080p with a couple of weirdnesses in between there and competing technologies, and for a while there, the average purchasing duration for decades in the television industry was like 11 plus years. And then for this brief, glorious period for a fistful of companies, it dropped down to about 3 years. And then as we finally, in the worst possible way, evolved everything up to 1080p and now 4K, you watched all of this just unbelievably, I'm just going to be rude and say crap, that most of which did not survive for very long, but was a reason for upgrading your TV. That's an industry changing experience, right? If you can get people to go from buying your product every 10 years to every 3 years. And then of course, the margins got to be so small that the entire industry collapsed in new and exciting ways.
That's still innovation, isn't it? Technically speaking.
Of sorts.
Yeah, no, I knew the margins were bad in televisions, and this was many years ago, but it was a television company that had basically started as a television company very late in the game, and they were market disruptors. They changed the way people thought. They radically dropped the prices on high quality televisions, and then they were like, "Well, we're starting a line of PCs because the margins look so attractive." And I thought to myself, the margins on PCs are like 2 to 5%,
Yeah.
like grocery store margins, and those look attractive to you. And that was when I started really paying attention to financials in the industries.
That's
I worked
eye-opening
in.
for sure.
Yeah, I was like, PC margins look good. Wow.
And then what do the rest of them look like?
Yeah. I still remember it. I was just gobsmacked, which is a word I never get to say. But just being like, so the worst margins in technology look great to you. Okay.
I was going to say that's the boardroom you want to be in.
Yeah.
Hey, I got an idea. I'll digress a little bit. Years ago, when I worked for Tandy Corporation, and it was a side hustle. It was actually a local radio store. And we'd have sales meetings every Saturday morning, which I actually enjoyed because you really got to talk through the grit of everything that allowed you to make a great paycheck, right? And I had this coffee mug, which still chaps my butt that somebody stole my coffee mug. But in any case,
Who does
coffee
that?
mug had a couple of folks sitting in a boardroom and a gentleman up front at the chart, and someone was stood up at the in the boardroom, and the caption read, "Bob, that's a really stupid idea. I'm afraid we're going to have to kill you." Again, Mitch can edit that part out. But it was so spot on. With how many of us have read or heard about decisions that took place in a boardroom and maybe that were voted on, and you sit there and you go, this is asinine. Why are we doing this? This makes no sense whatsoever. So, yeah, that mug really spoke to me.
I feel like on a weekly basis, somebody says to me, what were they thinking?
Yeah. Yeah.
I wish I had an answer for that.
Right. Or like, why am I doing this?
We need more of those mugs.
We do. I'm going to find them.
I'm looking forward to my incoming UPS package stuff.
That's my mission for the afternoon, is to find a supply of these.
Not a bad way to spend a Friday.
I'm with you, Willie. There's just moments where you're like, so that's the plan. Huh. All right.
Well,
Good luck with that.
we're going to have to kill you.
It's
like,
this is why Mom told me to always keep my resume polished. Sometimes you stick around just to see if that idea actually works, and then it redefines your concept of what things should be. But I find that's about 1% of the situations when I react to it like, what?
For better or worse.
you make certain you're standing near the door with your shoes firmly laced up.
I still laugh. I had a friend of mine who was working for their first venture capital funded startup, and I'm like, do you know the phrase burn rate? And they're like, what's that? I'm like, that's how fast they're spending the money they acquired.
Yeah.
They're like, why do I need to know that? I'm like, you need to know that because at some point, everybody in that company that does what you do is going to be released if the company isn't successful. And you want to know that before it happens.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Oh my goodness. I want to shift gears because that was probably the least happy thing I've said.
I loved it.
I've worked for a few startups. I have a complicated relationship to venture capital. I'll just leave it at that.
That's another great idea for a mug. I have a complicated relationship with venture capital.
just because it's a great $3 million a year business doesn't mean you can 100x it, no matter how much money you throw at it.
Right. No, absolutely.
I feel like we'd probably live in a better world if people didn't just acknowledge and accept that, but maybe embraced it and said, "This is, we're here to do this, and we're going to do it well."
Yeah.
And just stuck to their guns like that. But that's not the world we live in. The line on the chart has to go up, and here we are.
No, I'm with you. I still laugh because there are moments in Silicon Valley where everyone will discover something like, I like good coffee, or this speaker sounds good, and all of a sudden huge amounts of venture capital will drop onto some place it doesn't really belong. And the one I will not name the company, but it was a consumer audio company, and I want to say they ended up with something crazy like $100 million in venture capital, and they were selling pretty spendy products at the time, like $2,000, $3,000 to $6,000 was the entry level. And
are they still around? Oh, I'm sorry.
Oddly enough, they
are still around in any? Okay, in the same capacity, or have they pivoted?
They're still around inside. I think they managed to not spend all of the money, but my friend who is also, and this is a high-end consumer audio company, and my friend calculated, who is also a venture capital funded kind of guy, not me, him. He said, well, I figured it out. I think they can break even if roughly 1/3 of America buys one of their products.
Wow.
He's like, I think they can
That's
pay
quite
back
the goal.
VC. He's like, I can't get the math to work on an IPO.
Now I'm trying to imagine what company that may be.
I have a couple of guesses, but I'll save them for afterwards here.
Yeah, in case my math is wrong, I'm going to keep my mouth shut. But somebody who's good at mathing and business figured this out. I think they may have actually said if every single person in America buys one of their products at this margin, they should be able to pay back their venture capital. But
ouch.
Yeah, it was a funny moment. It was like, it's
Great audio.
we live in interesting times. I'll just leave it at that. Oh my goodness. Mr. Franklin, where can people find more? Where can people stalk you on the internet and find more about you?
Oh, you can definitely find me on LinkedIn, and you can also reach me via email at franklindjservices@gmail.com.
Mr. Dunbar is keeping his location relatively secret, but should people want to track you down on the internet, what do you advise?
Yeah, certainly. I manage my time a little bit. I'm on LinkedIn maybe once or twice a week. You can always find me there. Otherwise, drop a line, visit our website, midwich.us, and I'm usually behind the keyboard there.
I feel like, Steph, you're going to tell people to go to ravepubs.com. Is that a brazen assumption?
Yes, that's absolutely correct. If you are interested in reading the latest home AV and pro AV news, you can go to ravepubs.com. We are also on, virtually every social media, as am I, Steph Beckett on LinkedIn, and Steph L. Beckett on X or Twitter or whatever the hell we're calling it these days.
I think it makes Elon happy if we say X.
Then Twitter.
On that feisty note, ladies and gentlemen, this has been episode 734 of AV Week. I am Patrick Norton, and thank you so much for joining us on the show. And if you're not already subscribed, do me a favor, search for AV Week on your favorite podcatcher.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
Hey listeners, it's your AV sneakerhead, Jennifer Weaver. Listen to AV Career Masterminds, where I chat all things job-related in the audio-visual industry. You can find AV Career Masterminds where you subscribe to podcasts.